Hello everybody and welcome to the GKaiser Age Macross Valkyrie lore video series. My name is Lucian GKaiser and today we're going to be looking at the iconic VF-1 series of Valkyries. So let's get started. GKaiser Age launching! The VF-1 Valkyrie is an icon of anime mecha, probably one of the most recognized anime mecha aside from Gundam Mobile Suits, and I fell in love with it the first time I saw it. The look of the VF-1 is reminiscent of the F-14 Tomcat, my personal all-time favorite fighter plane, and the fact that it can quickly change into alternate forms only made me love it more. It is a sleek military mecha, a lethal-looking machine in all of its various modes, able to engage enemy forces in any environment with incredible firepower for its size. During this video, as we discuss the different VF-1 models, there will be spoilers for the Super Dimensional Fortress Macross TV series, so if you haven't seen that already, definitely recommend checking it out. It's available on Amazon right now for legal streaming. There are 5 models of the VF-1 that exist in the Super Dimensional Fortress Macross TV series: the VF-1A, VF-1D, VF-1J, VF-1S, and the VEFR-1. The 5th one only got a few seconds of screen time. It was mixed in with other Valkyries, so I actually didn't even know that it existed until I started making this video. The Macross variable fighter files were recently released, and I was able to glean some information from some of them that were partially translated, but there are some details that I will have to assume were carried over from other earlier VF-0 series of Valkyries. While there are several variants of the VF-1 series throughout the history of Macross in total, today we're going to be focusing and mainly looking at the variants of the VF-1 series seen in Super Dimensional Fortress Macross TV series. Later videos will discuss the VF-1 Valkyries seen in their various other Macross media, including the games, depending on how much information is available to cover it. With the anti-UN forces finally defeated, the United Nations government analyzed all the combat data recovered from the incident over the island of Manyan in the South Pacific Ocean. The combat effectiveness of the variable fighter modes was confirmed and proved how valuable they would be in combating the aliens they found on Alien Spaceship 1. By providing several military aviation manufacturers with access to the over-technology recovered from the ship, the companies worked with Shinnakasu Heavy Industries to finish development of the first all-environment variable fighter. The key to the successful redesign of the VF-0 airframe came with the development of the thermonuclear reaction turbine engines, which provided greater power output and the ability to work in space, along with nearly eliminating fuel requirements. Used as a non-variable fighter prototype for aerospace dynamic flight testing, the VFX was used to verify the airframe for the VF-1 series as stable with the new engines. The first transformable version, the VF-1X, started testing in 2007, and by November of that year, the VF-1A was formally adopted for production by the United Nations government. Mass production of the VF-1 series began in late 2008, with its first combat deployment occurring on February 7, 2009, during the Zentradi attack on South Atreya Island. The VF-1 was deployed with several variants, each of them improved or tuned in a specific way to suit a specific pilot skill level or combat goal. Research and development would continue throughout the war, providing various enhancements, including the Armored Valkyrie and the Fast-Pack Super Valkyrie weapon systems. The VF-1s retain the same 3 transformation modes: the Fighter Mode, Gerwalk Mode, and Batroid Mode, thus the name of the Variable Fighter, or VF. In fighter mode, it acts as an aerospace superiority fighter, able to mount a mixture of weapons on the 4-wing pylon mounts, from short-range micro-missile pods to anti-ship reaction weapons, along with the gun pod on the belly. As the new engines are more compact and require less fuel supply versus the VF-0, this allows for a more streamlined design with greater maneuverability. Super maneuverability can also be performed thanks to the redesigned two-dimensional thrust vectoring nozzles that also serve as thrust vectoring reinforced feet for the other two modes. Multiple thrusters have been installed at key points on the body, wings, and engine nacelles to give the VF-1s excellent maneuverability in space. The VF-1s can also re-enter the atmosphere without needing a re-entry vehicle, though it must discard the gun pod as this could not withstand the heat of re-entry. Heat shields slide into place over the intakes and the cockpit to protect it from the heat as well. This is more of an emergency maneuver as the Valkyrie is not capable of exiting the atmosphere again unless attached to a booster unit, and it can use that booster to launch from the surface into orbit easily. The Gerwalk mode acts as an intermediate mode which stands for Ground Effective Reinforcement of Winged Armament with Locomotion Knee Joint. In this mode, the legs and arms of the humanoid mode are deployed, making it capable of flight, walking, and traveling via ground effect from the engine thrust vectored through the feet. In this mode, the variable fighter is at its most maneuverable, though its overall top speed is limited by the aerodynamics of this mode. It easily has the best mobility for rapid movement of all the different modes. With the gun pod in hand, the Gerwalk can easily target fast-moving enemies while still accessing wing-mounted missiles in an engagement. With the new redesigned thrust vectoring nozzles that also act as the feet of the Gerwalk mode, it is even more stable and able to get off even greater aerobatics. Batroid mode is where the variable fighter assumes a humanoid form that was designed from the start as a way for humanity to deal with the giant-sized humanoid aliens discovered in the wreckage of the Macross. The main purpose of this mode is engaging in close combat in limited spaces, like within the hallways of enemy ships or urban areas where close quarters combat would occur against the TROID. The overall speed of the Batroid in air and on the ground is limited greatly in this mode due to the humanoid shape, but it can boost for short distances via ground effect. The redesigned Batroid mode for the VF-1 series is more compact and sleeker, providing for a reduced target area and greater mobility. This, combined with the greater output and power from the new engines, allows it more physical power in its limbs for improved dexterity. Along with a frame made of space metal material, we can assume it also adopted the titanium carbon composite outer shell of armor that was introduced on the VF-0 Valkyrie series. But the most important defensive system still remains the energy conversion armor system, most likely the same or an upgraded model of the AWAGRA-105 used with the VF-0. It uses surplus power generated from the engines to enhance the strength of the armor, and with the higher output of the new thermonuclear reaction engines, makes it even stronger than that which was on the VF-0 series of Valkyries. The VF-1 series of Valkyrie fighters have less surface area thanks to their reduced size, meaning less energy is needed to run the energy conversion armor system, but it still requires a large amount of the engine output to actually run optimally. Since the fighter mode requires most of the engine output for steady flight, it still retains the position of having the lowest output for the energy conversion armor. While in Gerwalk mode, the energy conversion armor increases the armor strength to about 5 times greater than that in the fighter mode, and it achieves a rating of 10 times greater than when it's in Batroid mode, as the engine usage in both of these modes is much less than the fighter mode. The energy conversion armor allows the Valkyrie enhanced defensive strength against enemies, especially making it when it's fighting in Batroid mode. The Valkyrie can engage in direct combat and take a beating without being destroyed completely. Working alongside with Pratt & Whitney and Rolls-Royce, Shinnakasu Heavy Industries developed the world's first thermonuclear reaction engine, the FF-2001, and then the upgraded version, the FF-2001D. A combination of thermonuclear reaction over technology with conventional jet engine design, the operational benefits of the thermonuclear reaction turbine engines are considerable. Instead of burning fossil fuels to superheat the air provided through the intakes to provide thrust, these engines use the immense heat generated by the thermonuclear reaction power plant and the body of the engine itself. With this technology, it enables the VF-1 fighters to break free of the need for large fuel tanks and the limits of thrust generated by combustible jet fuels, allowing the smaller engines to produce far more thrust using considerably less fuel. Just a few hundred pounds of hydrogen slush is sufficient to permit the variable fighters to continuously generate hundreds of megawatts of power for their onboard systems without having to rely on large amounts of conventional jet fuel. This allows the variable fighter to have an effectively infinite range for atmospheric flight, as a thermonuclear reaction can easily superheat the air intake without needing the use of fuel. When needing to achieve speeds above Mach 3, the VF-1 reconfigures into ram jet mode, where the pre-compressor stage is bypassed, allowing the FF-2001 engine to provide a higher thrust needed for high-altitude, high-speed flight. The VF-1 can go several days between refueling operations in the field if necessary, achieve speeds much faster than conventional powered jets, and of course allows the fighter to fly in space and even operate underwater if needed. In space, the turbines are used as a combination fusion rocket and ion engine, but because the reaction mass has to be used to fuel this thrust, the fighter is limited in operation time based off of the amount of hydrogen slush, as it has not only supplied the main thrust from the engines, but also to the maneuvering thrusters. Specialized add-on equipment for the space combat would greatly improve the combat range and operational time for the VF-1 in the future. In Gerwalk and Batroid mode, the VF-1 Valkyries have 3 auxiliary engines mounted on the back section of the craft. They provide a boost of directional thrust to help with maneuvering the variable fighter in both Gerwalk and Batroid modes, but are unable to be used in fighter mode due to their position when transformed. They can also be used to help prevent the Batroid from falling over, or to help it regain its balance during mid-air and ground combat, or when taking a hit, they can also help it get it back on its feet. The head unit has an advanced high-definition TV camera with multiple zooms to provide the pilot with an excellent field of vision while in Batroid mode. Integrated into the head is also a night vision camera, infrared laser designator, laser rangefinder, IFF data link system, and ultrasonic motion sensor for targeting enemies in a variety of environments. In fighter and Gerwalk mode, the head is used as a tactical combat analysis and targeting pod, and if the head is damaged, there are backup sensors on the main fuselage. With the head-mounted rapid-fire lasers, it can work also as a turret for attacking enemy craft or anti-missile defensive fire. The VF-1s come with 3 magic hand manipulators that can reach into access panels along the VF-1s for in-field maintenance and temporary repairs. Roy Fokker used the ones on his VF-1S to repair damage done to Hikaru's VF-1D in episode 2 of the TV show, allowing the damaged Valkyrie to stand upright correctly. In order to keep the aircraft balanced due to its unique aerospace operational design, a combination of 3 digital fly-by-wire flight control systems is used to assist with keeping the variable fighter stable. This system will calculate and adjust control surfaces and thrust vectoring during combat to help the craft maintain its balance. This includes the thrusters for maneuvers in space. The flight control system has built-in limiters engaged that will reduce pilot control to a degree in order to prevent the aircraft from being forced into a possible stall maneuver or performing a maneuver that could cause a crash. This system can be disengaged manually by the pilot, but only ace pilots of the Valkyrie would dare to manually, of course, try to control the fighter while operating it. As seen during combat with Roy Fokker and other ace pilots, manually controlling the fighter fully can increase its maneuverability greatly. The cockpit features 3 large, full-color multifunction displays that also allow for full video communications, and each screen can display different information determined by the pilot. Along with the twin-engine throttle control system, the cockpit also features a very unique set of 3 control sticks, with the main flight stick in the center position, with the other 2 flanking the multifunction displays, meant for use in the other modes, most notably in Batroid mode. These flanking flight sticks allow the pilot to use the arms of the VF-1 more accurately and have pressure-sensitive triggers that work the fingers along, allowing for, of course, more delicate work. This system of control is so accurate, even a rookie pilot like Hikaru was easily able to pick up the young woman Minmay without harming her. Along the sides of the main control panel are 2 rearward image projection screens to give the pilot a good rearward view to the left and right. These are necessary due to the design of the cockpit not allowing for good rear view clearance during combat. The foot pedals act as controls for the yaw in fighter mode, but in Jurwalk or Batroid mode they could control the amount of power put into the legs for walking or running, and thrust when it needs jet propulsion movement. Something that is only used in these early model variable fighters are the BGF sliders for changing modes, requiring the pilot to reach up to the console in front of them and actually slide the letter representing the mode that they are wanting to change into in order to make the Valkyrie change between its different modes. These are present as levers in the Batroid mode cockpit setup, along with several other controls being rearranged into a very busy cockpit layout. Because of how inefficient this system is, it would be replaced later with a much more effective mode change system that can be used for easier, rapid reaction transformation maneuvers. Outside of lore, because the variable fighters that were designed for Macross Do You Remember Love and the Macross Zero OVA series were created several years later than the original TV series, a more sensible modern setup for the transformation controls was adapted. That is something we will cover in the next part of the VF-1 Valkyrie series of videos. The forward fuselage of the cockpit of the Valkyrie can be detached as an emergency rescue pod with an independent life support system, rescue transponder, a hypermetabolic system injection, and a simple emergency medical system. This is important for a fighter that will be operating outside of the atmosphere and in the depths of space as an alternative to simply ejecting into space, as long as the forward fuselage is not badly damaged. It can be attached to the underside of the forearm of another VF-1 to be carried back to home base, and with the life support system on it, does not have to rely on the variable fighter carrying it to provide life support. Now, this was only seen on the VF-1D being performed early on in the TV show, but we can assume that this system was integrated into all the other Valkyries as well, as it makes sense to have such a nice safe system for your pilots when they're going to be operating in space combat. Now, there also, of course, is, in case the Valkyrie is critically damaged or about to be destroyed, an ejection seat system that also works in space as well. As we have now covered and discussed the main aspects of all the VF-1 Valkyries, let's look at their weapons next. The VF-1 series main weapon is the Howard GU-11 55mm 3-barrel Gatling gun pod, a powerful weapon designed with combating alien threats that would be carrying over technology-based armor. 55mm was selected as the best caliber weapon for the VF-1 to use, and is carried within a gun pod style casing that can be wielded like an assault rifle in Batroid mode. Loaded with 200 rounds of ammo, this powerful weapon can easily core enemies in uncharted craft, but is limited by the fact it can only be reloaded by an aircraft ordnance crew. Later model gun pods would eliminate this weakness by making clips that the variable fighters could carry to reload during combat, but the best the VF-1 series could do during combat was to land and have their gun pod exchanged for a fully loaded one. It is able to use multiple types of ammunition, but the primary early loadouts were armor-piercing, discarding Sabo-depleted uranium, and when heavier armored Zentradi units began to be fielded, high-explosive anti-conversion armor rounds would be used to ensure maximum penetrating power though these rounds were much more complicated to manufacture. The AMM-1 hybrid guided multi-purpose missiles were the most used ordnance carried by the VF-1s and were designed using over-technology to condense the complicated systems into a small enough frame. They were designed as a combination advanced medium-range air-to-air missile and a Maverick air-to-ground anti-tank missile, and can be used in atmosphere or in space. Guidance modes can be switched between infrared or radar guided depending on the intended target. This allowed it to have greater accuracy in case either guidance method failed at tracking enemy alien units. Considering the need for heavy penetration of over-technology armor, the warhead mounted on the AMM-1 is a high explosive anti-tank type, since a standard air-to-air warhead would not have the power needed. 3 of these missiles could be mounted on each of the 4 wing pylon hardpoints, allowing for the VF-1 to carry a total of 12 of them. These missiles proved to be very effective against Zentradi attack craft throughout the initial war and beyond it, and would be replaced by more advanced versions on future Valkyries. The HMM-01 micro missiles are an advanced weapon made possible via over-technology. They are a small, high maneuverability missile made out of a combination of an advanced tracking system, a high-velocity rocket motor, enhanced thrusters, and a very powerful warhead. Because of their compact size, these aerospace missiles can be carried in large amounts and were important weapons for some of the special equipment developed later for the VF-1 Valkyries. Micro missiles are mostly used for short-range attacks against highly mobile enemy craft, and because of their powerful warhead, are easily capable of destroying all but the most heavily armored craft with just a few hits. These are carried on the VF-1 mostly in the UUM-7 micro missile pod, with 15 missiles in each pod and 1 pod per wing hardpoint for a total of 60 micro missiles. These weapons were introduced later into the fighting, as the standard AMM-1 were more than enough to deal with the standard Zentradi attack craft, but the introduction of the Zentradi battle suits with their deadly high speed, agility, and own micro missile launchers made production of the micro missile pods a high priority for future battles. The most powerful weapon carried by the VF-1 Valkyries is the RMS-1 reaction missile. It is designed for long-range anti-ship duty and for dealing wide area mass destruction, allowing it to take out whole squadrons of enemy craft. Made with over-technology, reaction warheads are basically a form of clean fusion warhead made possible by using charged particle bombardment to initiate the reaction instead of a fission bomb. These warheads use the same principles as a reaction furnace to release massive amounts of heat with very little radiation, resulting in practically no radioactive waste when detonated. Due to the extreme pressure and the heat released during detonation, the explosion ends up creating a massive ball of superheated plasma, seen in the show several times. These weapons have been used to take out small to medium-sized Zentradi vessels and can severely damage larger ones when targeting weak points. Since these weapons are both expensive to produce and extremely dangerous, permission must be given by the highest authorities in order for them to be used, much like the strict controls exerted on 20th century nuclear weaponry. An optional ordnance for firefighting, the VF-1 can carry specially made fire suppression missiles. These explode, releasing a large amount of fire suppressant liquid to help put out fires, and they were mostly used after Space War I during the Zentradi Revolution. The VF-1 Valkyrie was also able to carry legacy weaponry like Sidewinders, Sparrows, and more, but they were considered inferior to the over-technology based weaponry. Legacy weapons also lack the ability to be used in space, even further limiting their usefulness in the upcoming battles. That is all for the basics of the VF-1 Valkyrie's weapons, so now let's get down to the details of each model of these impressive machines. We'll be discussing their history, additional special equipment developed for them, and the notable pilots who flew them. The VF-1A is the first fully mass-produced variable fighter. The VF-0 Valkyries saw only limited production as they were meant for field testing variable fighter technology and to engage the anti-UN forces' own variable fighters, the SV-51. You can see more information about those two fighters in my previous videos. The VF-1A was manufactured by Northrom, a fictional company that is a combination of Northrop Grumman, and by the end of its military production run, there were a total of 5,093 VF-1As built. This was the most widely used Valkyrie during the First Space War and proved to be the most effective weapon system against the Zentradi war machines. It also worked as the test bed for developing future advancements in variable fighter technology and improving tactics for fighting enemy alien forces. The VF-1A can be recognized by the single Mauler ROV-20 anti-aircraft laser cannon mounted on its head and the single square green colored lens covering the multiple sensor and optical sighting systems. It was designed to be easy enough for fighter pilots to transition from modern fighter jets to the variable fighter with little trouble, and as such was built with the most standard of specifications from the VF-1 series. The main color of brown with the white trim is the standard mass production coloring for the VF-1 Valkyries and also signifies Valkyries with pilots of basic skill. The most recognized pilots of the VF-1A Valkyrie were Maximilian Genius and Hayo Kakizaki of the infamous Vermilion Flight Group under the command of Hikaru Ichijo. Max piloted a mostly white VF-1A with a very unique style blue trimming, making it easy to recognize amongst the rest of the VF-1As. Out of war, the reason for this coloring was to make his VF-1A stand out in the show from the rest of them. In universe, I believe this may have had more to do with Roy Fokker, and we'll discuss that a little bit later in this video. Max easily became an ace pilot within his first combat mission, and it should be noted he was able to make use of the VF-1A's ability to transform beyond what a beginner pilot normally could manage. By switching modes rapidly in combat, he was able to take down an incredible amount of enemy craft while piloting his VF-1A during Space War I. A really fun moment was when Max was sneaking around on board a Zentradi ship in Batroid mode, stumbles upon a Zentradi officer, and then somehow manages to dress up his Valkyrie in Zentradi clothes so he can sneak around the ship more. Kakizaki also had the same style of coloring on his VF-1A, except it retained the standard brown coloring with white dominating most of the fuselage, something to make his fighter once again stand out well in the show as part of Vermilion Flight. While his piloting skill was below that of Hikaru and Max, he still managed to gain experience piloting his VF-1A and gradually became better until the end of his piloting career. A good example of how strong the energy conversion armor is during Batroid mode is when Kakizaki's VF-1A takes a direct hit during Vermilion Flight's first sortie and yet still remains intact enough for him to survive. This was a bonus to new pilots and rookie pilots that the VF-1A could withstand such damage in Batroid mode, but in fighter mode where the system is at its weakest, the VF-1A could still easily be taken out by a few well-placed shots from a Zentradi Regolt. The VF-1D is a combat-ready trainer, two-seat Valkyrie fighter designed to train new and transitioning pilots in the complicated operation of a variable fighter. Stonewell Bellcom, formed as a merger of Stonewell based on aircraft manufacturer Rockwell International and Bellcom based on the aircraft manufacturer Bell Aircraft Corporation, manufactured the VF-1D for the UN spacing. There were 12 VF-1D originally on board the Macross when it launched, with a total of 85 being produced during its active service time. It has the distinction of being the first Valkyrie in the show we get to see transform and stand up in Batroid mode and show off how durable they are after crashing through several buildings. The most unique feature of the VF-1D is the two-seat configuration and the redesigned head unit, which is equipped with two Mauler ROV-20 anti-aircraft laser weapons. Another unique feature of that head is the dual lens setup with a top and bottom rectangular set of sensors and cameras. This setup allows the cadet pilot and the trainer to have their own views, and in case something happens to one or the other while in Batroid mode, they will have easy access to viewing what is happening. The VF-1D can be fully controlled from either seat, allowing for the instructor in the back seat to take over in case of any trouble. In Batroid mode, when the seats are raised from the Valkyrie, the back seat raises up first, long enough for allow the occupant out, and then the front seat raises up next. The VF-1D is capable of carrying a full loadout of weapons for live fire training and combat situations, but is usually reserved for training only. The VF-1D, listed as VT-102, is the first variable fighter Hikaru Ichigo ever piloted, although it is more by accident than anything else. During the first Zentradi attack against the Macross, Hikaru found himself thrust into combat only to get shot down, only being saved by transforming to Batroid mode so that the energy conversion armor could take the brunt of the impact. After several other incidents involving rescuing a young girl he met named Minmei and having a face-to-face encounter with his Zentradi soldier, the VF-1D eventually took too much damage along with being stuck in the death grip of said Zentradi soldier. Roy came back for Hikaru and Minmei, who was in the backseat of the Valkyrie, and used the emergency escape capsule function to carry them both to safety. It was a good example of how tough the VF-1 Valkyrie was, and how the VF-1D was a good training machine that could take a lot of beating before no longer being able to function without repairs. One more notable moment with the VF-1D was the wedding of Maximilian Genius and Miria, the first wedding of a human and Zentradi. They flew in a VF-1D painted in a navy blue, a deeper shade of the blue Max normally had on his Valkyrie, as part of a wedding celebration. The name of the episode this particular Valkyrie was used on was named Virgin Road, so this version of the VF-1D would be called the Virgin Road Valkyrie. There are some conflicting issues regarding the episode, as the company that was hired to animate it were known to make several animation mistakes, and during the episode it was shown in some scenes as a VF-1A, but seeing as it would be a waste of time and effort to convert a VF-1A to a two-seater, and there were no records of there ever being a VF-1A with two seats, I'm going to say that this is the VF-1D, especially since that's what most of the artwork I found shows it as. And one more bit of proof is the fact that the company Yamato did a 1/60 scale figure of the Virgin Road VF-1D figure, and that exists, so I'm going to go with the fact that it was a VF-1D. Next up is the Shinnakasu Heavy Industries VF-1J. The J designation of the fighter is much like Japanese fighter designations for aircraft manufactured by a Japanese company, and is an upgraded version of the standard VF-1A. These are typically assigned to senior officers of a flight group or to a squadron leader, as it is tuned for a less computer-controlled automatic aerodynamic control, allowing for better performance. The VF-1J remains a single-seat fighter, but like the VF-1D, shares the slightly increased firepower of having two Mauler ROV-20 anti-aircraft laser cannons in a slightly improved configuration mounted to the new head unit developed by GKaiser Industries. The new diamond-shaped sensor allows for more advanced sensors and HD imaging systems over the VF-1A and VF-1D. There were 50 VF-1Js on board the Macross when it launched, and only those 50 VF-1Js were ever produced. While there is no exact source material as to why, based off events like the destruction of most of the industrial base on Earth by the orbital Zentradi fleet, that the factories where it was built were destroyed as well. And once the war was over, with only Zentradi remnants left and limited resources left on the Earth, it would have been easier to produce more VF-1As versus the VF-1J. The most famous pilot of the VF-1J was Hikaru Ichijo in the SDF-Macross TV series, where his own stylized personal colors were added onto the fighter. The fighter is all white, but has just enough of a nice red trim on the main body and fuselage, along with the wings helping break up all the white. The in-universe reason for this is assumed to be that Roy Fokker did it to make sure Hikaru felt as comfortable as possible with being a combat pilot, since those were his personal colors. As the creators of Macross needed a way, of course, to make sure the main character pilots of the show would stand out from the other mass-produced Valkyries, they were given unique coloring. I always considered that the other Valkyries in Hikaru's Vermilion flight were colored so Roy could easily pick them out in a fight, since all three of them were green in his book. In episode 11, Hikaru would lose his first VF-1J in the most unique way, a close quarters combat engagement against the Zentradi commander Britai. While trying to rescue Misa Hayase, Britai survived being blown out into space and was strong enough to not only crush the head of the Valkyrie, but rip off the entire front section of the Battleroid's chest fuselage. The second one would be lost during a battle on Earth due to friendly fire as part of a miscalculation during a dayless attack against an enemy cruiser. His wingman Max, along with his wife Miria, would be seen piloting VF-1Js in their own personal colors after their wedding. Max had a vibrant blue color in an inverse style of Hikaru's color scheme, with the blue covering most of the body and white for the trim. Miria had hers colored a bright red color in the same way as Max's, but with the red dominating the majority of the body and a white trim. These two ace pilots showed amazing skill with their VF-1Js throughout the battlefield and would prove beyond a doubt the VF-1J was a lethal machine in the right hands. There's more to the history of these fighters, particularly Miriya's, but we will save that for a future video. There is one more thing I have to talk about regarding the VF-1J, and that is the pressurized infant crib pod used by Max and Miriya to transport their infant daughter into space. Yes, even though there were plenty of VF-1Ds left, and I'm sure they could have crafted a special seat for their child to sit safely in the back seat, they decided the best way to carry their child into space was carrying them like a gun pod under Miriya's Valkyrie. To this day, that infant crib pod is still the most silly thing for me in SDF-Macross TV series. Okay, moving on. As the VF-1J was designed by Shinnakasu Heavy Industries, they were also responsible for the prototype plans for the GBP-1S Ground Combat Protector System, also known as the Armored System. The plans for the system were stored on the Macross manufacturing plants, and it was first installed on Hikaru's VF-1J, as he was one of the most experienced VF-1J pilots at the time. The main purpose of this armor was to be a system to allow a VF-1 Valkyrie to engage in a dedicated ground combat situation and provide overwhelming firepower and enhanced defensive capability to withstand enemy heavy fire. This is a system comprised of very thick layered set of armor covering the majority of the VF-1J in Batroid mode, each armored piece containing several missiles. Because of the design of the armor and its mass, the VF-1J cannot change forms without ejecting the armor first, and its overall top speed is limited as well. Deployment of these units in atmosphere would require them to be delivered to the combat zone via some kind of special transport, much like destroids, and in space they can make their way faster, but again the extra mass would require more of their hydrogen slush to be used, but further limiting their deployment range. In space, their standard deployment tactic would be close range heavy fire support, using their mixture of 56 Erklon GH-32 grenade crusher high maneuverability micro missiles, 18 Erklon GA-100 crusher high speed armor penetrating projectiles, and 6 Remington H-22T large hand grenades along with its gun pod. During its first operation, Hikaru made poor judgment in going on a long-range recon patrol with the GBP armored system still installed on his VF-1J, and only survived due to the defensive capability of the layered armor. Another weakness was confirmed when Hikaru recklessly fired all the missile ordnance nearly simultaneously, and the enemy used fracticide to its advantage. By only destroying a few of the missiles, the rest of the missiles were taken out by the fragments and explosions from the others, causing little to no damage to the enemy craft. From that point forward, only limited numbers of the GBP were produced, and the tactical doctrine was for them to only be deployed for close support actions where heavy armor is required. Once the munitions on board the GBP are expended, the armor can be purged, allowing the Valkyrie to engage opponents in standard combat. Data gathered from this system would help to build one of the most effective combat systems that will go on for future generations of variable fighters as the most powerful add-on weapon system. In order to discuss that system, though, we have to take a look at the next in the line of the combat variable fighters, the VF-1 Valkyrie, one of my personal favorites when it comes to variable fighters. The VF-1 is the high-performance end of the VF-1 development line, being developed and manufactured by Northrom before the launch of the SDFMacross. Only 30 of these elegant fighting machines were ever produced, and they were given only to Commander of Air Group CAGs, and in some cases assigned specially to squadron commanders of exceptional piloting skill. The reason for this is the fact that the VF-1 contains not only new engines with more thrust, but also advanced avionics, allowing its performance to exceed the previous VF-1 Valkyries greatly. With a greater amount of thrust-to-weight ratio, the VF-1's maneuverability is top-notch and requires a skilled pilot to be able to achieve maximum combat effectiveness. The new FF-2001D thermonuclear reaction turbine engines were more expensive and required more maintenance, so the VF-1 was produced in limited numbers, and new ones were not constructed due to limited resources after the end of the main conflict with the Zentradi. The head of the VF-1 was designed by GKaiser Industries, mounting 4 of the Mauler series ROV-20 anti-aircraft lasers and with a new visor-style sensor lens. This gave it a wider field of vision and with enhanced targeting equipment to match the much more responsive VF-1, this could be seen with the VF-1 being able to intercept missiles at a higher rate than the other VF-1s. With 4 of the lasers and more power output from the new engines, the Mauler lasers have been seen to even core a regular battle pod easily. They can also be focused into cutting lasers, though this could potentially burn out the barrels as they were meant to be fired in pulses versus a steady single beam stream. The VF-1 in SDF-Macross was piloted by one of my favorite pilots in all of anime media, Roy Fokker, and he had his VF-1 painted in his personal style. The skull and crossbones of Skull Squadron emblazoned on the vertical stabilizers, and the golden, yellow, and black stripes on the main fuselage make it easily recognized. You can also see that awesome skull and crossbones on the cover that covers the cockpit when in Batroid mode. Roy was piloting variable fighters since the initial test models, and of course he piloted his custom painted VF-0 in the combat against his old instructor during the events of Macross Zero. Thus he was immediately entrusted with a VF-1. During the battles against the Zentradi, Roy demonstrated over and over again how superior the VF-1 was in the hands of an ace pilot, and was looked up to by his little brother Hikaru, who was always amazed at how good Roy was. But, as always, eventually Murphy's Law caught up with Roy, and Hikaru would find himself filling in as Skull Squadron leader, piloting his big brother's VF-1 into battle. As Skull Squadron captain, Hikaru would go on to honor the legacy of his brother Roy, having grown into a more mature variable fighter pilot tempered by the fires of war. Through the later half of the Macross TV series, he continued to impress with his handling of the VF-1S, and even more so during his first action in the fast-packed armed version, the Super VF-1S. So, let's get started talking about the biggest advancement and enhancement for the VF-1s, the Fast Pack system. While the VF-1s so far have been very effective in space combat, the Zentradi unleashed the terror of their highly mobile and deadly Quindulan Ra battlesuits. The VF-1 Valkyrie needed something to increase their space combat mobility, range, and firepower without impeding their ability to transform, and they found it in the experimental systems developed by Shinnakasu Heavy Industries. The fuel, armor, sensor, tactical packs are additional equipment that was first pioneered with the VF-0, but it acted more like an advanced conformal fuel tanks and did not see mainstream use with the VF-0. The fast packs for the VF-1 Valkyries offer the benefits of additional boosters and verniers to increase speed and maneuvering, layered armor to increase survivability, and additional weapons to improve on offensive capabilities. In the case of the VF-1 Valkyries and SDF-Macross, the super fast packs were implemented as the battles against the Zentradi escalated and required more firepower along with survivability. The super fast pack system features two MP-BP-01 booster thrusters mounted on the dorsal section of the VF-1 with 12,000 kg class Pratt & Whitney EF-2001 thruster engines. Each of them is tipped with a micro missile launcher loaded with 12 HMMP-02 micro missiles, each of which is smaller than the standard HMM-01 micro missiles. The two CTB-04 conformal propellant coolant tanks were mounted on the legs to provide greater range, while also providing improved agility through the high maneuverability vernier thrusters and low thrust vernier thrusters as well. Two MP-AR-01 micro missile launcher pods loaded with 3 missiles each are mounted on the rear guard under the center ventral section in the fighter mode, which are the forearms in Jurwalk and Batroid mode. They are loaded with heavy warhead micro missiles designed for penetrating heavily armored enemy attack craft. As the super fastpacks contain ammunition and propellant fuel, the fastpacks are designed to blow off once they become too damaged or if their stores are expended. This allows a variable fighter to continue fighting beyond its normal operational time in space and give it enough ordnance to deal with massed enemy forces. One downside to the fastpack is the system cannot be used within an atmosphere effectively due to the weight and how it severely hampers the aerodynamics of the VF-1 Valkyrie. Using it in an atmosphere also makes it so that the Valkyrie has to use its hydrogen and slush fuel to provide enough thrust to fly due to the weight of the fastpacks. Later fastpack designs would become more aerodynamic, allowing them to be used effectively in atmosphere as well in space. During an incident where Misa Hayase's shuttle to Earth was attacked by overwhelming Zentradi forces, Hikaru launched in his VF-1S with the first super fast pack installed as part of a long-distance emergency intercept. The unexpected firepower of that single Super Valkyrie was enough to destroy several Zentradi units and force the rest of them to retreat, proving, without a doubt, the supreme effectiveness of the fast pack system. Full production of the fastpacks began on board the SDF-1 Macross afterwards, and by episode 27, for the final battle against the main Zentradi fleet, VF-1A, J, and S models were armed with super fastpacks. It is also during that battle we also get a glimpse at the final model of the VF-1 Valkyrie that we'll be talking about during this video, the VEFR-1 Electronic Warfare Valkyrie. Manufactured by Stonewell Bellcom, the VEFR-1 was designed to fulfill the role of an electronic warfare and reconnaissance Valkyrie early in Space War I. Featuring a 2-seater cockpit configuration, the VF-1 includes several advanced electronic hardware for use in reconnaissance missions, as well as electronic countermeasures and electronic countermeasures warfare. As it is dedicated to those roles, the VEFR-1 has no weaponry and does not have the hardpoints to carry ordnance, since the wings were modified greatly to fit in detection equipment. Even though it functions strictly as a support unit, the variable transformation system is kept intact to increase battlefield deployment versatility. With engine output equal to the VF-1A, they can easily engage and withdraw swiftly if needed during combat, but they tend to loiter well beyond any weapon that the enemy may fire at them, with good enough ECM to counter them. It is equipped with a fighter-scaled rotary radome, allowing it to detect, identify, track, and provide accurate long-range targeting details to other Valkyrie fighters. Replacing the gun pod is an electronic surveillance pod mounted on the left forearm, carrying a wide variety of sensors, able to pick up the emissions from enemy craft at long range, everything from listening into radio or radar emissions. Both hand manipulators were replaced by retractable, folding electronic warfare systems and detectors that work together along with those mounted on the wings. This Valkyrie is only seen for a very few seconds during a group shot of Valkyries in front of the SDF-1 Macross as they get ready to engage the main Zentrani fleet in episode 27 of SDF-Macross. Of course, it does have the ability to relay its information between itself, the Valkyries in flight, and to the command center of the SDF-1 Macross, allowing for it to provide tactical overview at long distances. And so, that is it for the VF-1 Valkyries seen in Super Dimensional Fortress Macross, the TV series. But hey, that is not the end for the VF-1 series of Valkyries. Next up on the GKaiser Age Macross Valkyrie lore video series will be part 2 of the VF-1 series of Valkyries, starring the ones from the movie Macross Do You Remember Love, and a few other media sources. But that is not all. I will also be discussing variable fighter tactics and what makes them so deadly in combat as seen in the Macross TV series and the movie. I want to thank you all for joining me here in the GKaiser Age. If you enjoyed this video, then target and fire at that like button to help the channel grow, and download your thoughts into the comment section below. Also, don't forget to link up with the channel through the subscribe button and activate the bell icon if you want to be alerted by the YouTube early warning system when I upload videos so you can engage them right away. Don't forget to use the share system to data link the video to your friends and then dock the video into your favorites. Check out the GKaiser Age playlist data files if you want to see more videos. But again, thank you for joining me here in the GKaiser Age. I will see you all again in the next Macross Valkyrie battle.「宇宙のコーラを引き連れて」